Hey, so it is week 85 in Intuitive Momentum Fitness, and today I am talking about keeping it simple to get out of survival mode. And there's a couple reasons for that, and actually the two people that commented on my initial post perfectly highlighted those two reasons. First, my mom said, "My challenge is a tendency to get overwhelmed and frozen. It's an ongoing battle." So if you've had major health challenges in your life, and in particular if you have trauma, complex PTSD, and you have one of the four trauma responses as your native, and you can have multiple: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. That makes it challenging to keep up with life when life gets overwhelming. And if you have experienced trauma, you're already at a deficit because so many of things, just everyday things in life, can activate that response of hypervigilance within you, let alone just how overwhelming and chaotic everyday life can actually be. So sometimes it's challenging enough to just deal with life, but then to have to navigate all the triggers and the flashbacks and things that come up within your body as a result of trauma that you've experienced is so overwhelming. So reason number one to keep it simple, my mom said, the tendency to get overwhelmed and frozen. So that's the first reason to keep it simple. Second reason, Naughty, Mandy Naughty, but she goes by Naughty, says, perhaps other overfunctioners and or perfectionists can relate. I don't think my brain can grasp what simple is sometimes. My baseline seems to be overly ambitious days where I do everything or nothing. I'm practicing little rituals every day to mitigate this, and certainly more strength training will be added, although I'm good at walking around the world all the time. Thanks, Kyler. So yeah, so my mom talked about getting overwhelmed and freezing as a response to overwhelm, which is kind of an emotional flashback to being traumatized. And then Naughty talks about being perfectionist. And a lot of trauma survivors are perfectionists because, especially if there was actual intentional abuse, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person knew that they were abusing, but their behavior was abusive. And when you experience that over and over again, and you're like, especially in childhood, when you're trying to please a parent and the parent is just never happy, and you're like bending over backward to be enough for that parent, you, through experience over years and years and years, get that message that you are never enough. Nothing that you do is enough. You cannot be good enough. And so the bar is set so high that nothing less than perfection is enough. And because perfection doesn't exist, you're continually a failure at everything that you do in life. So, my big example, there's a few of them that I like to use, but the one was, one of the responsibilities I had growing up regularly it would cycle back to me and stuff was to clean the bathroom. And I, had this very detailed outline of everything I was supposed to do in the bathroom, or at least verbal outline. And so I scrubbed down the bathtub and the walls and the sink and the toilet and the mirror and organized the closet and swept the floor and mopped the floor. And I grabbed Dad and I was so excited to show him how clean the bathroom was. And he saw that I didn't wipe off the water spots on the chrome around the faucet in the bathtub. And he just laid into me about being lazy and just taking shortcuts and not being diligent and not being observant and not being obedient and being rebellious and all that sort of thing. And something in me just like, I can't ever be good enough. But I kept trying this was probably when I was 6. And I kept trying till I was 22 to be enough for my dad, and I always failed, always was this close. What Nadi says here about having overly ambitious days of doing everything and then contrasted with days of doing nothing. Hey Nadi, good to see you. Hey Adam, good to see you. It's like there's some days there's just no way that you can get it done. And what I didn't realize was that in the beginning, I transferred that to my workouts, and I didn't want any subpar workouts on my record. And so if I felt like I had some energy that day, then I would do my crazy intense workout. And if I didn't have the energy, I wouldn't do anything, because I didn't want a subpar workout on my record. And I have no idea, what this record was that I was thinking I had, or who was looking at it, or who was reviewing it, or giving it a grade or something. But at some point I realized, wait a minute, like I'm going all these days without any workout just because I don't have enough energy for the super intense workout that I think I need to do. What if I did something instead of nothing? And just was okay with having these low intensity, unimpressive workouts on my record. Still haven't figured out what the record is, but yeah, so last night I posted in the group saying, keep it simple. This has made the biggest difference in my healing journey. Before I knew all of the layers of my health issues, before I knew about my complex PTSD, I experienced powerful aspects of transformation because I learned to insist on keeping my wellness simple. What is the most challenging aspect of your physical or emotional health? And the meme that I shared was, you're not going to be perfect, but I hope you play anyway. And sometimes that mental shift from perfection and getting it done right and being super impressive to just being playful with it, even with my nutrition, like I think of it as experimenting and playing when I try different things that might seem extreme to someone else. Like I'm just going to try this for a few weeks and see how I feel. And I've discovered some incredible things just from playing around with my nutrition and being willing to be extreme. And often I am listening to professionals and studying things. And so I have, very good evidence-based reasons for choosing what I play with, but still I don't get dogmatic about it and I just relax into it. So Nadi says, right, who the heck is grading this stuff? Yeah, I have no idea. Some imaginary cranky person that has apparently reached perfection, has nothing better to do with their lives than grade all of the rest of us. So, so yeah, perfectionism is a trauma survival mechanism. It's like it's like the extreme and toxic version of being above reproach. So like no one can be critical of me because I am so perfect at everything that I do that I can avoid all criticism, and that's how I intend to survive and prove that I'm worth being here and being alive when, yeah, we aren't reaching for a grade. And I think that's, something that some people have pointed out is a negative aspect of our education system is that everyone is judged on the same things in the same way. And some people begin to develop the idea that they're bad at school or bad at learning or can't pay attention or whatever, and they may be the most genius ones. But we have this system that we try to get everyone to conform to. And, sometimes that happens individually within our families, and we grow up thinking, oh, I'm terrible at keeping house. That's kind of been a tempting thought for myself, because I got in trouble so often growing up because I wasn't perfect enough. And I didn't realize until later, stepping back, that it was my dad's goal to find something that I didn't do right. Like that was his only goal, was to point out something I didn't do right so he could feel better about himself and I could feel terrible about myself. And he'd feel better if I felt terrible. And so it wasn't because I was actually failing or falling short. Like there were so many things that I was amazing at, and in general I was actually an amazing kid, an amazing son, and he should have been proud of me for the things that I did and all the things that I did well, but he wasn't happy with himself, and he was never going to be happy with me. So when people like us commit to being perfect, we actually just end up becoming the puppet of the narcissist in our lives, whoever that is. So we're willing to dance and leap and spin and bend over backwards to try to keep this person happy, try to get their approval. And sometimes this puppeteer is actually only still existing in our heads, no longer in real life anymore, but they still exist there, and we keep punishing ourselves on their behalf for not being as perfect as we think we need to be, which is insanity. And yeah, and so stepping out of the system, no longer playing the game, is the only way to win. And so coming back to fitness and health and well-being, how do we step out of that perfection game and keep it simple so that we can reach our goals and intentions of wellness? So I remember for me when my mom, on a hunch after Marine boot camp, which the doctor that she took me to see said I never should have survived, she on a hunch had me tested for hypothyroid hypoadrenia, and they were both super low. And the doctor said it shouldn't have survived boot camp, shouldn't have made it through. Um, and she gave me a couple of things that I should do. The main thing that she said was eat every 2 hours, because I wasn't getting enough food, and I didn't have, obviously I was like really, really low energy. And so she was suggesting that I eat smaller meals every 2 hours so that my thyroid and adrenals could get some nourishment, some energy from the calories. Calories are energy. So there's nothing evil about calories. So this whole fixation on low calorie isn't necessarily good. It is important to know like what calories you're shooting for and how nutrient dense those calories are. But calories are just energy, and we need that to survive. But and so I started eating every 2 hours. So it was like, that was simple. I could manage that. And this was after 6 months of Marine training, and I was completely wiped out. This was during the season of when I was sleeping like 12 to 14 hours a night. I was like a complete zombie during the day. Couldn't get my brain working, could hardly get my body working, and just surviving basically as I was recovering from 6 months of super intensity in the Marines after 22 years of trauma. So a lot going on, but like eating every 2 hours. I had a timer on my watch, and it went off every 2 hours, and I went and tried to eat something. And that was simple enough. And so I didn't know anything close to what I know now about macros like protein and fat and carbs and all that stuff. I just ate something every 2 hours. So that was simple. I could do that. And then another thing that I did at that time was I intended to try to go to bed at the same time every night and then get up at the same time every morning. Especially when I started trying to force myself to get up at a reasonable time instead of sleeping for 12 to 14 hours. And so I tried to be consistent so that my body knew when it could rest and when it needed to be awake and active. And so I felt like that was helpful. That simple thing of like, I need to go to bed at the same time, I need to get up at the same time each day, be consistent with that so that my body knows what it's in for and where it's at in my energy use. And then, like I've mentioned many times before, this was also the season where I took my workouts that I had been trying to do that were mostly full body, and I just pared it down to one muscle group a day, like maybe just calves, just inner thigh, just outer thigh, just triceps, just shoulders, just chest, just back, just quads, just hamstring, just glutes, So every day I just had that one little muscle group that I was trying to work that day. And so even if I was completely fatigued, I had the energy to work that one muscle group 4 or 5 times with long rest periods in between. And I was able to be consistent with that. And that was the first time in my life I saw some serious strength improvement. And later on, as I was getting stronger, getting more energy, then my version of keeping it simple at times when I was super, super busy, either working multiple jobs or working and going to school, I would just, do the hundreds like I talked about last week. Try to get, by bedtime, get 100 repetitions of push-ups on a day. So whenever I, had 30 seconds, I would, go do 10 or 15 or 20 push-ups. And then, a couple hours later, do some more push-ups. Just keeping it super simple. Maybe the next day it'd be squats. Just body weight squat, just wherever I was. Maybe after I use the restroom, standing in front of the sink, just do some squats before I left the restroom. Keeping it super simple, just cycling through exercises that I could easily do throughout the day. And I didn't have to schedule a workout session or, take a big chunk of time or prep or whatever. So And then later on, I, tried to, as I added other things, because I got really consistent with all those aspects. Then later on, then I'm like, well, how much water am I drinking? How do I get maybe a little bit more water in? And so first I would track how much water I was taking in. And then I think, okay, so I probably want to get a little bit more water in. So how do I get a little bit more water in? And what time of the day do I need to have how much? And now it's super simple. I have 2 of these. These are 32 ounces. So 4 of these for a gallon. And right now I'm between 3 and 4 of these each day. And so I have 1 of these before breakfast, water. And then from after breakfast to lunchtime, or just a little after lunchtime, I have another one. And then in the afternoon, I have my 3rd one. Sometimes I finish that before dinner, sometimes not. But then I'm on my 4th one by dinner or after dinner. So it makes it really simple to kind of visually see where I'm at with that. And I have them with me. I fill both of them up at night. So I have 2 ready to go in the morning. And then in the middle of the day, I refill both of those. And I have them for the rest of the day. And that keeps it super, super, super simple. And I'm not like grabbing a glass and trying to guess how many ounces it is and then trying to remember how many other glasses and different kinds of glasses that I've had and stuff. It's just like, it's all exactly the same. I just keep it simple. And then same thing with nutrition. So like I've said, I've been pretty consistent over the years, and I've made small adjustments and tweaks. So over the 20 years I've been consistently making my own meals, I'm eating drastically different than I was a long time ago. But throughout the seasons, I was very consistent. I made small adjustments that have accumulated to drastic changes over time. But yeah, I make sure I have the same foods stocked in my fridge. I don't buy things that are not on my that are not good, that I know are not good for my body. And so that keeps it simple, not having those kind of things in the house. And then I'm, have a pretty consistent routine of what I make for breakfast, what I make for lunch, what I make for dinner. And I'm often making a bulk batch for lunches and then package those up. So most of the lunches I'm able to just grab something, heat it up and eat it. So, and then when I was eating vegetables, and that's a whole other story about finding out about the lectins and oxalates and phytates, and I think there's another word in there, that the anti-nutrients that the vegetables have that I don't do well with, that I only recently, within the last year and a half found out about. But I always got frozen vegetables because that kept it simple. And I know a lot of people don't like the taste of frozen, but when you think about it, I've talked to some of the farmers that do harvest the vegetables for frozen foods. And when those vegetables are ripe, they're working 24/7 to harvest those and flash freeze them and get them packaged and frozen. So as long as it stays frozen, then those vegetables are probably fresher than whatever it is that's in the fridge right now. Because it was picked a long time ago and it was in the store and it looks fresh, but it's not going to be near as fresh as what you're pulling out of the freezer fresh. So, I mostly steamed it, and I couldn't tell the difference when it was steamed between fresh vegetables steamed and frozen vegetables steamed. And they always came out nice and soft and warm and juicy, succulent. So it was an easy way for me to do that, because all I had to do was throw some frozen veggies in a pot, put that on the stove, and then I was cooking whatever else I was making. And then, the vegetables were just sitting there steaming, and they were ready by the time I was done with the other stuff. And I just like throw that in the mix on my plate, and the meal was ready. So, so that was one thing that I was telling all my clients about, like, keep it simple with the veggies. You can grab the frozen stuff. It's really inexpensive comparatively, and it's going to be, way fresher for you in our modern world. Since most of us don't have gardens in the backyard that we can go grab stuff out of. And even when we do, you can't have that all the time. So keeping it simple. So if there is anything else that you can think of to add, I'd love to hear it. Comment below or share in the group. Thank you guys for being here. Please keep the conversation going as you need to. Much, much love, and talk to you soon.